Now, the sharp-eyed among you will have noticed that there is a detail missing still from my drawing, and if we go back to the booklet, you'll see in the assembled view that there's this little kind of shelf below to put magazines on or whatever it is, whatever else you want to put on, and there's also some slots in the legs of my table which need also to be made in order to make that fit in. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what our dimensions need to be. We can see there's a distance of 102 to the bottom of the slot and a distance of 120 to the top of the slot, which means the slot is 18 wide. The slot goes in by 35. So I'm going to use my guidelines again in SketchUp in order to create that. So we have a guideline, take the tape measure tool, drag up by 102, and then drag up by 18 to create 120 at the top, and then we need a distance in from the side of 35. If I go over to my other leg, you can see that I've already got my horizontal lines because they go on forever pretty much. So all I need to do then is drag in that and type 35 to get it in exactly the right spot. Now I can really easily do these slots. Now there's two ways actually of doing this in SketchUp, and that's what happened there? Okay, well, here's an interesting thing to learn. All right, so what happened there is there was a little glitch in SketchUp, and suddenly I'm miles and miles away from my model. Now, if that happens to you, rather than trying to zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, what you can do is you can hit this button here, which is called Zoom Extents, and it takes you right back to where you were. So let's get back to where we were. There are two ways of making these slots. I'm going to show you them both. Right. The first thing I can do then is, the first thing I need to do is double click, so I'm editing this table leg, and taking my pencil tool, the first way to do this is to draw from here to here and then to here, which enables me then, of course, to use the push-pull tool to create my slot. And you notice when you're using the push-pull tool that if you go all the way through like that, you'll see this kind of strange kind of effect where there are two surfaces kind of trying to occupy the same space. That's when you know that if you now click, it will then cancel out and disappear. Okay, so that's your first way of doing it. The other way to do it is kind of in the perpendicular direction to that. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to go over to this side, and I can, from that intersection there, draw a line across. From that intersection there, draw a line across. And instead of going in sideways, I can go in lengthways and snap onto that guideline there, which makes sure that I'm exactly at 35. Now, either way is fine. You get the same result. And actually in SketchUp, it's kind of a nice thing that you've got two different ways or more different ways of achieving the same result. Now, the final thing we need to do here is we need to draw the shelf that's at the bottom. And you can see the length of the shelf is 800, which is exactly the same as the distance between the outside of the legs. You can see that the width of the shelf is 450, which is exactly the distance from the outside of this leg to the outside of that leg. So here's a real easy way of doing it. Again, I'm using please excuse the noises of my cat in the background. I'm using this point here to draw my first point, and I'm dragging across, and I'm going to draw across to the diagonally opposite point. Now, the problem is here I can't see it really very well. Oh, actually I can see it pretty well, but I can see it even better if I go to my rotate tool or my orbit tool, so I can see it a lot better. And if I go now back to my rectangle tool, it remembers where I was and allows me to continue with creating that rectangle, which I think is an awesome feature of SketchUp. So you can start, you can change your view, and then go back and finish drawing an object. Now, again, I can use what I've already drawn to push-pull this up to 18, which is the size it needs to be. However, that isn't actually the end of the story, because we also have these little end pieces that stick out, which we haven't yet drawn. So we need to go back and finish that off. And that's super easy because I've already drawn all the geometry I need to enable me to draw this in the place where I need it. Take my pencil tool and from that point to that point, draw a line. This is very similar to the way we made the cross members. From that point to that point, that point to that point, draw a line, and then we push pull. And because this distance here is 800, we can just push pull it to there, touch this surface, and that guarantees that the surface that I'm push pulling is aligned with it. Do the same thing on the opposite end. Line from there to there. Line from there to there. And use my push-pull tool to pull it, touch this surface to make sure it lines up. And I think, other than making that into a component, which of course I always need to do, I think I'm good. Now, just in case you don't believe that what I did there actually is correct, I'm just going to move it so you can see the details of the shape. Our product is finished. So let me get rid of these guidelines just to neaten things up a little bit. And there we have the finished product.